This is Jets at Noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
I mean, you don't really think about it. If you win the President's Trophy, it doesn't really mean much. The Stanley Cup's what we're going for. So I think it's just getting into the playoffs and then going from there.
Well, that was Vladislav Namestnikov earlier today. The Winnipeg Jets off to the East Coast to kick off a 4-game road trip against the New York Islanders, coming off the 2-1 shootout loss to the Flyers on Saturday. Well, you know, it's not going too bad, Jim. I mean, I know that nobody really cares about the President's Trophy at the end of the day. It's a nice little banner that you can hang in your rink, your home rink. But the Jets right now, they have a 4-point cushion on first place. Washington's got a game in hand, but 88 points to 84. You know, despite winless in 2, the sky is certainly not at the point of falling. I got you. Jim Toth, I caught mid-sneeze, and that sneeze, that was like a 10-second...
Excuse me.
That was a 10-second lead-up.
Pardon me. At my age, they last forever, Cam. You just wait. Your sneeze will start at 7 in the morning, and you'll get it out at 7:48. Pardon me. Yeah. Interesting road trip coming up for sure, and then coming off the the overtime defeat, and then of course the shootouts.
It wasn't overtime against the Preds. It was a 2-1 loss.
Sorry, 2-1 loss against the Preds. Pardon me. But the overtime, they get a point against Philadelphia. Look, I got to be honest with you. I thought, I was a little surprised that Fedotov, the 6'8" mammoth goalie, I thought he was real rough in the first period, and then he sorted things out and started making some saves.
He was rough when the Jets were rough.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest, when they got 2 power plays with less than 5 minutes ago, I thought the second one was going to win that game for them, and it just didn't come through. So I know we're going to get to the power play, but this is an interesting road trip, right? The Islanders, the Flyers again, New Jersey, and then one more, and then they come home, and the trade deadline's mixed in there. They will be taking on these same Flyers on trade deadline day, New Jersey on Friday on the trade deadline day. So this is going to be an interesting week, and we're going to delve into all of that. But it's not like they got a point on Saturday. If you listen to the post game, they're not. They want to be better than what they are, and they've shown that.
Yeah, we're going to get into that at 12:30. Christian O'Mell, host of the 680 CJOB Sports Show, joins us now. Hey, Christian, how are you?
Good, guys. How you guys doing?
Doing wonderful.
Good,
doing
thank
wonderful.
you.
What are your thoughts on Saturday's game first, before we get into anything else?
I think, well, first of all, scoring 1 goal isn't good, and then doing it in back-to-back games isn't good. I think Fedotov was pretty darn good, but I think for the Jets right now, they're a team that has, finished really well this season. Their finishing stats have been off the charts, and then guess what? There are going to be moments where that regresses a bit, and that's just natural for the course of an 82-game season. But, right now that's what they're in, right? They just won 11 in a row, so there's a natural, I think, reversion to some degree that will happen. And so you lose back-to-back games against teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. That kind of hurts, but ultimately I think there's a couple of things. One, you're reminded that you're human and that it doesn't come easy and that you do have to work hard. And I think that's a good reminder for a team that's hunting for, in the hunt for the President's Trophy. And then the power play just was at a historic clip for so many games in a row that too was going to be, I think, a natural regression. And I do believe that part of this is you had a couple weeks off, and 2 of the 5 guys on your top power play unit did not practice with that top power play unit getting ready for the resumption of play, right? Because Josh Morrissey and Kyle Connor were off in Boston for the Four Nations face-off final. So I'm not saying that those 2 are the weak links, but maybe it's a bit out of sync right now. And then they're also, they have the puck. It's not possession isn't the issue, right? Because they were in there for like a minute and a half, and then the second unit gets just scraps and doesn't have enough time to get anything set up. But it seems like they're a little more passive on the power play right now. They're just a little more stagnant on the power play right now. They'll figure it out. I know they will, because earlier in the season, there were games they won only because their power play scored goals for them. And these were a couple of games like that where if their power play scored goals for them, they would have won. But they didn't, and they lost. So I'm not panicked because, again, over the course of an 82-game season, things like this happen. If it happens for 6 or 7 games in a row, then we start, I think, having a little bit more of an issue. But right now, my general excuse is just that happens.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And this was something Jim and I spoke about in our exclusive podcast portion on the show today. We'll talk about how losing changes your perspective, right, Christian? I mean, you go on an 11-game winning streak, and all of a sudden you're winless, technically. I mean, you lose 2 in a row, but you're winless in 2 because you pull a point in the shootout loss against the Flyers. But it's sort of a swap, right? It's a reminder of something, and that's not always a bad thing.
No, I think you want to lose a bit going into the playoffs. I think we're still quite a bit away. Like, they weren't going to win 28 games in a row going into the playoffs. But the idea of being reminded of your vulnerabilities, I think, is good. And then if they lose to tomorrow and Thursday, and all of a sudden they've lost 4 in a row going into the deadline, does that change things for Kevin Cheveldayoff? I don't think it should, because I think the bulk of the season of work has shown what this team is, really. So I don't think there's anything the team can or can't do between now and Friday that changes anything Chevy does personally. But I think overall, yeah, you're going to have slumps. That's going to happen. And the key to the best teams is that you make those slumps last a game or 2 and not 5 to 10, right?
What do you think they do by Friday, Christian?
Well, there's what I think they're going to do and what I want them to do, and they're not the same thing. Let's go with what I think they're going to do. I think what they're going to do is a couple things that their fans are going to look at and say, but that's what we said when they acquired Nemestikov and Niederreiter a couple years ago. A season in which this team was nowhere near as good as they are now, right? I remember that trade deadline vividly. We had a game broadcast that day, and being on the pregame show with Kelly, just talking about how underwhelmed we were. And these are 2 guys that have become mainstays of the lineup. And what I think the Jets are probably going to do is something similar to that, where they go out and get a depth-ish ad, but someone that can help you. So is that a second-line star center? I get the feeling it won't be, even though I think it would be great if they could get someone that has a little more scoring a pop and a little more offensive IQ than Vlad Nemestikov, because if he's now your 4th-line center, that depth is incredible. I maintain that I don't think he's a 2C on a cup winner. He's a great player, a nice player to have. I just don't think he has that offensive next level to get to in the playoffs. And then I think they're definitely going to add someone on the back end. They cannot go into the playoffs with Logan Stanley and anybody. You know, I like Colin Miller more than I like Logan Stanley. I just don't think Stanley or Fleury or any of those guys are the right guys to have in your starting lineup in the playoffs. Sure, depth, if they're waiting in the wings in case something happens, okay. But I definitely think they need to do something on the 3rd pair.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be interesting as things go across here. I mean, is there any names that pop out to you, Christian, or do you think it's just going to be another situation where you're going to be watching a Kevin Cheveldayoff and then a name's going to come on the board and you're going to go, oh yeah, that guy, yeah, he's still there?
Right, because that's what we did in 2018 with Stastny. No one saw that coming. The Nemestikov and Niederreiter additions weren't really on our radar either. And then you look at who's available this year. And I admit my thoughts on this are tainted by the columns that I've been reading and the reporting that's being done and following Murat's work in The Athletic and the names he's mentioning. But I've seen Joel Armia's name tossed around a bit in terms of a deeper lineup ad, which is fine if you want to beef up the PK a bit. I don't know how much that really makes or breaks their case to win the cup. I understand the idea that they're really good as is, and how much do you really want to add to it? On the back end, someone like a Carson Soucy, Jamie Alexiak. I've seen Ristolainen. I don't think that's going to be the guy personally, but I could be wrong. And then up front, yeah, like Armia, Jake Evans. I mean, the pipe dream is Ryan O'Reilly, I think, as the 2C with 2 years left. The problem is there's going to be a bunch of other teams that also would love to have Ryan O'Reilly. And are the Predators ready to just say no and trade him away? Are they going to say, you know what, let's give up on this because they've got a bunch of guys signed that they think, well, this year sucked, but we can't be this bad forever because these guys are signed to decent term contracts. So I'm ready for anything. I'm personally ready to see the reports and the press releases and whatnot this week and be like, oh, okay, as opposed to, oh, that's exactly what we thought was going to happen. Now, Monahan was on a lot of people's radar last year. That happened. So it's not always the one you least expect, but with Chevy, prepare to be not underwhelmed, but prepare to be acknowledging that it wasn't the guy on the top of everyone's trade bait board.
What about Brock Besser? Like, I am of the belief that they are going for it this week. I think they are calling and looking at top 6 guys with term and offering first rounders and the Corby Barlows of the world. That is my personal belief. But if there's no term on it, I think it changes. But a guy like Brock Besser, who went to UND, who's from Minnesota, I wonder if you could bring him in here. And I know he's heading into free agency, but not only bring him in here and make a run with Ehlers and everybody here, and then in the offseason go, would you like to stay and be the second-line center on this team for the next couple of years? What do you make of a deal like that where we've seen Chevy sort of make a deal now that pays off with an extension later?
Yeah, Christian, we only got 30 seconds.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick then. I think that's not really his MO, right? I think that's he doesn't really take on risk so much, but then again, they haven't been this good, right? And that's the one thing we have to remember too. In the other trade deadlines, they haven't been this good. 2018 is the one I always look to because that was their best season to this point. They went out and got a guy who was a pending UFA. They gave up a first and a prospect for him, and he was great for them, right? Didn't end up re-signing, but he was great. So maybe we should be looking at that, even though it was 7 years ago, and that might inform what they do this week.
Christian O'Malley is the host of the 680 CJOB Sports Show. Christian, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, you guys too. Thanks, and I'll take a car wash anytime. It's dirty out here.
Well, you just see me. I'll take care of you.
Slow your roll there. Slow your roll. It might come your way.
Jets at Noon is brought to you by Wash Method Car Wash, 690 St. Anne's Road. VIP take on the text line will win a VIP car wash from my good friends at Wash Method, 204-780-6868. The Jets embarking on a 4-game road trip. A little snarly after the game. Not that they were rude, but you look at the body language, a little dejected. Scheifele and Ehlers following the loss to Philadelphia. We'll come back after this. Don't go anywhere. And a certain player is not playing likely until the playoffs, if at all. We're going to talk a lot about this one team when we come back throughout the rest of the show.
Still think it's a great idea?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
What about you?
Well, I don't own a team, so I think it's a fabulous idea.
Jets at Noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
I want to talk Seth Jones. We will talk Seth Jones before the show is out. That was a big trade.
Big one.
Yeah, big trade, and a real good one for the Panthers. We'll discuss that more. But continuing with Panthers news, lots of Panthers news. GM Bill Zito says that he hopes Matthew Tkachuk will be able to return in the playoffs as he deals with a lower body injury. Of course, he was, I think it was a groin.
He's out for the regular season.
The suspicion is that it was a groin, happened at the Four Nations, which opens up an LTIR pool for the Panthers of $10.6 million. Kelly Moore said Bill Zito pulling shades of Kelly McCrimmon of the Vegas Golden Knights, GM there.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, $10 million, and you brought in to get Seth Jones at $7 million, to get him retain that extra salary. I think is a great deal. But look, this is the argument of the Four Nations, and all you have to do is go to Jets Nation and see this kind of season they're having, and go, what if Kyle Connor, Josh Morrissey, or Connor Hellebuck are done for the regular season right now? That's the debate about these tournaments, right?
Yeah.
What if?
Well, what if?
I don't think you're very
worth
happy.
Apples and nuts. Isn't that how the saying goes?
I don't think you're very happy that you have LTR room.
Two birds, one bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, Jim. And I learned that from Faulty Towers.
You want to get two birds stoned at once? I mean, wait, what?
We'll talk Seth Jones Ricky, after this. And
what did Ricky say? Yeah, two birds
stoned at once.
I don't know, Bubbles.
Jets players are ticked off. And it's a good thing. I'll tell you why when we come back.
We had our chances, their guy saves it. KC, that's one that goes in most nights. So, kudos to them.
That was Mark Scheifele, not happy. And if you go to my X account, Cam at Noon, just look at his body language in the video that I reposted there. Scheifele giving mostly 6-second answers, mostly dejected. Ehlers Also speaking there about it's about time that they fix some of their issues. Here was Ehlers.
You see it in the games where we've dominated and played really well against the best teams. We get pucks in deep, and we don't get away from that. Obviously, if the play is wide open, you can make the play. But, right, too many games, way too many games, we force a lot of stuff, creates turnovers, goes the other way, creates momentum for the other teams. And we're so much better than that. So, yeah, it should be about time.
I want to talk about this. I think this is great. The guys are ticked off. They don't accept a 2-1 shootout loss to the Flyers. They're not happy, and they're going to demand better from themselves and the rest of their teammates. I want to talk about that in a second because I have kind of a mind as to why that one felt a little bit worse than I think perhaps the one against Nashville. I'll talk about that in just a second here. But Jim, we got a bunch of text messages.
Sure.
It is no surprise that everybody wants to talk about the trade deadline and what the Winnipeg Jets could possibly do. So you want to do a little bit of rapid fire here? We don't have lots of time to spend on every single text message we get, but I picked a couple of them here and we'll go. So this texter says, I think they should see if they can get Ristolainen. He strengthens them this year and still has 2 years left that helps them through what likely will be an offseason loss of Pionk. What do you think, Jim?
I don't think they're going to lose Pionk. I think it was Elliot Friedman or sorry, I forget which insider. I like to give
an insider, yeah.
An insider said that they are currently working hard to re-sign Pionk.
I believe it was Elliot Friedman, though.
I do like Ristolainen, and I was watching him. I think he had 5 or 6 shots on net on Saturday. I liked when he pinched and properly. He's not a dangerous offensive threat, but he is a big physical defenseman that I really like. I think they keep Pionk and try and get him. I think so. My names are on defense: Oleksiak, Ferraro out of San Jose, and Ristolainen are the guys that I think that they are sort of zooming around and focusing on, or the ones that I would as well. But Ristolainen impressed me on Saturday night.
Yeah. This texter, Jeff, says definitely need a top 6 D-men, so those guys would definitely fill those roles. Rick says, don't you get home ice advantage in the playoffs throughout if you win the President's Trophy, President's Cup? That could be important. Yeah. How do you feel about? I mean, home ice obviously is better. Like if you could choose to play every single game in the playoffs at home, you would tick that box. Is it a little overrated though, Jim? I think it's a little overrated.
I think it's valuable in Game 7 if you get there. We've talked about this earlier in the year. Clearly you want it if you can get it. Don't get me wrong. But there's so much parity in the National Hockey League anymore. I honestly believe that if you're the road team and take one of the first 2, you're the one who has the advantage. I honestly believe that. I think if you lose the first 2 and come home, clearly you have to win the third one. But if you do, you're at home. When you break down series, I think it comes to a big advantage, a more important advantage in a Game 7. But do you want it? Yes. Do you go out of your way to ensure of it? I just think you try to win games.
This texter says, trade Ehlers and DeMello for Besser and Myers. I don't think you're getting rid of
Not a chance.
No, you're not getting rid of
bring Tyler
DeMello.
Myers back in with the way his game is at right now. Great guy, great individual, great leader. I don't mind the Brock Besser, but that's a rental, right? That's
this texter says, let's get rougher. Gudis on defense, Kane up front. LOL. Evander Kane?
I don't think that's happening.
I don't think you might end up winning the car wash though from 690 St. Anne's Road VIP take if you're calling for
with all that's going on.
Evander Kane coming back to this team. That's a hot take.
Yeah, with all that's going right in the world with this team and in the room, I do not bring Evander Kane back to Winnipeg.
Eric says, do you think Parenko is a viable trade option for the Jets? He'd look good on the top pairing and slide DeMello down.
I do like Parenko. However, the same thing about Braden Shen. Like I just read that the Leafs are heavy on Braden Shen, but now that St. Louis is winning again and pushing for the playoffs, that they've changed their mind. Now, change their mind, I mean, I just read this morning from, I think it was Friedman again, who said the cost has gone way up. They're going to keep it. So much so, the fact that the St. Louis has won some games or are back in contention for the playoffs, that a lot of teams have shifted to Scott Laughton of the Flyers because Shen is like, now the price, they'll do it, but the price has skyrocketed because they're obviously back in the playoff hunt.
Jets at noon, of course, brought to you by Wash Method Car Wash, 690 St. Anne's Road. VIP take on the text line will win a VIP car wash from my good friends at Watch Method 204-780-6868. Hey, download the Jets at Noon podcast free now on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts, with exclusive Jets talk and content only found there. And take Jets at Noon wherever you go and continue the conversation whenever you want. Open up with that clip of Scheifele and Ehlers. Not happy following the 2-1 shootout loss to the Philadelphia Flyers. Look at their body language. Look at the answers. I don't think Mark Scheifele, I did play one clip that was longer than 6 seconds, but most of them were shorter than that. They were not happy. They were ticked off, and that's a good thing. And I wonder, one side of me was like, was it just because of those 2 missed power play opportunities? Like, that's enough to tick off somebody who's ultra competitive, knowing that they had the game and the potential to win right there on their stick, but they just couldn't close. And then you end up losing in essentially a skills competition after you dominate overtime. That one stings. Or I'm also of the mind too as well, Jim, that I think that they feel if they play like that and they lose a game tight like that, they're not going to win in the playoffs. And I think that each loss to them right now, they're thinking of it in the mindset of, well, what if we lose a game like that in the playoffs? How are we going to battle back from it? And I think that's why it might feel a little bit more personal right now.
Yeah, I don't read that much into it, to be honest with you. I first of all, I don't think you're going to get much from Mark Scheifele. In the lines of when you listen to Nick Ehlers and the in-depth, quite open and honest conversation he gave, I think Mark Scheifele shied away from those from a couple of years ago when the season ended against Seattle, and he said, I got to look out for myself and see where I want to be and blah, blah, blah. And then we spent the summer wondering and saying, well, those are comments that of a guy who might not want to be here. And then 3.5 months later into the summer, he joined us on Jets at Noon and said, well, yeah, I was really upset then and I was frustrated and I was speaking from the heart. But 2 days later, I'm like, well, I want to be here and I'm a Jet and I want to spend my whole career here. But, so I don't think he's good. My point is I don't think he's going to open up that much anymore. I think it's going to be cliche because now sorry, Mark, but I blame Mark for that and the organization. I was like, when he came on with us 3.5 months later, I'm like, that's all he needed to do. Like, if that's how he felt a month into the summer, and we could have cleared the air and ended 3 months of speculation that way. But they don't worry about that, right? Like, they go into their offseason, they don't. So I just don't think you're going to get in-depth quotes from Mark very often. I think it's going to be a lot of cliches. But I like the fact that he didn't like the fact that they lost. Nick, I thought, hit it more on the head. And I've said this before, like, there are years past where you played a tough game like that. The power play didn't come through and you got a point. And they're like, we got a point. We're disappointed we lost, but we're on to the next one. I didn't get that feeling on Saturday. No. I got the feeling of we've lost 2 in a row. And this is, it's all about the playoffs. We keep saying this, and sorry to our listeners that it sounds like a broken record since training camp.
Yeah, but that's how the listeners are. That's how they feel too.
That's exactly what you're waiting for, right? So, and I don't think it's put on for the listeners to talk like that. I think that's generally how the players feel, that losing isn't acceptable. And we are great, and we're going to find that next level this year in the playoffs. And so that's why I think when you win 11, get 1 point out of the next 2, that you talk as if you're on a 6-game losing streak, because they're well aware now we're not going to let anything creep into this good thing we got going.
Now, the Winnipeg Jets, they certainly want to win the West. I mean, through the first 3 rounds, they want to have home ice advantage. And right now, as of this moment, after last night and Dallas's win, the Jets are leading the Central Division by 8 points, and in turn, they're leading the West by 8 points as well. Vegas, they're ahead of, who's the top of the Pacific, by 10. So when you're leading by the West by this much, and you have this much of a cushion with 21 games left to go here, the challenge the Jets are facing, in my mind, Jim, is how do you manufacture urgency against teams that are desperate for points like the Flyers? I mean, Nashville, there's a huge separation. I don't know if you've given up there with the Predators, but there's certainly a sense where playoffs are not happening. Philadelphia, I think, is fighting an uphill battle, but I think the hope is still there that they can find a way to get themselves in the playoffs. 2 teams in different situations, right? So I think it's an important piece to this team's playoff puzzle, but wins are not as important as details.
Yeah,
right now.
You're right.
Yeah. And effort, I don't think, is a concern. I on Saturday, I did not see a team with a lack of effort. I saw a team that didn't start well and let the Flyers sort of take it to them in the first half of that game before I felt like the Jets totally took the game over and probably should have won that game.
I didn't like their games, Cam. And it's weird to say because you're right.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
Is it because you know they can be better?
And the reason I didn't like it is because I know they can be better. And the other thing about it is they didn't simplify it. I'm going to go back to the San Jose game where they poured everything on Vanacek and he was having the game of the season for him. They were getting goalied, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's 30 seconds to go. They're circling. They got the goalie out. And what does Nick Ehlers do? It was brilliant in my mind. He's goal line with the puck, and he just puts it on net. Everybody's waiting for him to find a seam, look for the pass. That's what the Jets did against the Flyers. They tried. They had power plays, and nothing was going right for them. And they didn't just try to try something. They didn't, and I'm not trying to say get away from your game, but what I'm trying to say is there are some nights you're just snake bitten and you have to simplify the game. And I would have in that third period, and they did. They poured a ton of shots in, but not a lot of them got through. I would have just gone to the net, puck on net, puck on net. I would have simplified. I would have stopped circling so much. I would have stopped looking for that extra pass because they've done that so well. But back to the San Jose game, Ehlers with 26 seconds to go or 28 seconds to go just puts it on net from the goal line, hoping for a bounce that it goes in. It comes out to Morrissey. He jumps. Morrissey fires it in. Sometimes you have to read what's happening and get a little unconventional.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of the times, and I definitely don't want to get away from the great system they have and what they're doing, leading down or not. But I thought they needed in the third period to just simplify things, try and get that extra goal. And I thought they just stuck with the whole overpassing, trying to be I'm not going to say too cute because it's not too cute. It's very good hockey. But just looking for a simpler thing where there's one less pass, put it on net. As soon as I see a lane, I'm going to throw it on net and crash the net.
It's interesting because Christian O'Mell said he thinks it has something to do with Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey being away for those times in the Four Nations face-off. And I wonder if that has something to do with it. I think if you talk to the team, they probably would say no. But it's because you have those two final power plays. Let's remember. Listen, they're 0-for-14 coming out of the break. They're on an 0-for-16 run. Let's go back 6 weeks. Is there any doubt in your mind that they don't bury one of those two opportunities?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, when the second one came, I'm like 2 power plays in the last 5 minutes in a tied game, they're going to score.
Yeah. I think John Tortorella felt the same way.
Well, he did. I was watching him on the bench, right?
Yeah.
And so, but then when the first one came, I was like, well, all right. But then when they got the second one, I'm like, well, because it was doing what has worked well for them. There's sometimes in games that you preach system and style and identity so much that you forget that there's sometimes pockets where, i.e. San Jose, you just got to try something, right? You just got to. So I think it was a brilliant play by Ehlers, not because it worked, but because it was out of the box thinking with 30 seconds left when everything else hasn't worked. Speaking
of dejected, Lauren A texts the show, and this is very important. I want to make sure I get this text message on because you have a dejected Frodo Baggins. I wish that this never had come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And as Lauren A said in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf consoling the young hobbit, all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Lauren A says, play like every game is the cup. The only 4 words to live by, Jets, score, win, repeat. I agree with everything she said.
I don't even know if that was English. Frogan, what?
Frodo Baggins.
Frodo Baggins.
Yeah. The ring bearer.
It'd be better if you said like Garth Brooks, where if tomorrow never comes or something like that. No, I get what you're saying there. Look, this is going to happen. I'll squeeze Lord of the Rings in at 8 point. I know you will.
I will.
But I just think this is going to happen. I'm not worried. It's a fascinating road trip. Like the Islanders are not a good team. And I said that last time and Islanders fans rose up and I get that. But since then, they are now sitting 8th in the East and they are 5 points out of the second wild card, but they have 2, 4, 5 players ahead of them. 5 teams, I should say. And see if you bounce back. They're not going to run the table, right? And again, it's weird to say about Saturday I didn't like their game because their game wasn't bad.
No.
It wasn't what I think it could be.
See the Philadelphia was the better team by a thin enough margin that they were able to squeak out a win.
Well, Philadelphia hung on and got to the overtime, and when you get to overtime. But I also want to give them credit. John Tortorella postgame had a great comment. He said they're the number one team in the league, and rightfully so. They're very deep and good. But we tried to take away the neutral zone. It's the most important neutral zone. It's supposed. So what we did was not sort of defend so much with the forecheck.
The Jets have to deal with that.
With the forecheck.
Yeah, the Jets have to deal with that.
That's what they had. That's what they did. They attacked with the forecheck as opposed to defending their own, like with the forecheck. So that means don't go in and forecheck, make them make a play. But they were attacking to sort of take over the neutral zone.
Seth Jones, now Florida Panther.
Very
discuss
happy.
that after this.
Very happy. He might as well have said, "Trade me right now," and hung up the phone.
It's at noon with Cameron Poitras and Jim Toth on 680 CJOB.
Hey, download the Jets at Noon podcast free now on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you find your favorite podcast, with exclusive Jets talk and content only found there. And take Jets at Noon wherever you go and continue the conversation whenever you want. Victor has won the car wash today for suggesting that the Jets bring back Evander Kane.
I went
a hot take like that. That's enough to win yourself a car wash from our good friends at Wash
Evander
Method.
Kane and call Dustin Buff and get him out of retirement.
Yes.
I went to Wash Method on Saturday.
Again?
Lined up to the street.
You can't go there enough.
Yeah, lined up to the street and was in within 10 minutes. That's how quick and efficient they are. Now, I went by myself, so when the 80s ballad came on, the Peter Cetera, and the blue soap ran down, I just sat and cried by myself alone in the car.
Yeah.
It was romantic.
You know what? It's good to get a cry out every once in a while. Call the Jets at Noon Hockey Hotline.
They don't judge you there.
Open 24/7. Call 204-780-6800. That line is open anytime. I love hearing from you guys. Seth Jones was traded to the Panthers by the Blackhawks on Saturday for goalie Spencer Knight, a conditional first-round pick in 2026. Florida getting a fourth-round pick back. Chicago also retaining 26% of Jones' salary, knocking it down to an AAV for Florida at only $7 million and Jones only in the third year of an 8-year deal. So $7 million, that was 9.5 down to 7. I mean, this is a sweet deal for the Florida Panthers. I like it for them.
I love it for them. I was like, that's going to be tough at 9.5. But if you could get a guy, I think even Seth Jones wishes his contract was $7 million, and that would have moved him a lot of places. But how could he not be more happy than to go to the defending Stanley Cup champions after those years in Chicago and coming out of Columbus? And he's getting his full contract. He's going to be there for a couple more years. He's going to be very integral, right? Aaron Ekblad isn't getting any younger.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to have a big future there. And, I mean...
Yeah, it looks like the Blackhawks didn't have an option here. They had to get rid of him. But to eat 2.5 for the next 5 years? He's only
that regime didn't sign him to that, though, did they? That brass didn't. He was there. I think he's 4 years in, and that brass has been there for 2 or 3 years.
I know, but it's still, for the organizationally, it's a huge mistake.
Let's sell it to Connor Bedard.
Thank you very much. Hey, Carter, great job producing the show today. That's it for me. Back same time.
Carter.
I'll see you.